possible vote on a resolution to require masks for all staff, students, and visitors during the regular school day effective 1/21/22.
I have a sunshine law violation.
What is the section and subsection?
It's going to be subsection 710(1)B, 710(1)A. This is regarding your policy meeting and some of your, I don't know if anybody read it because it's supposed to be a reading, and if you guys didn't read it, this was not what was discussed at the meeting, and it comes up worded differently. We were lucky enough to videotape it. No participant may speak more than once during a comment period without permission of the presiding officer. Where the sunshine law...
Mr. Uhas, what is the violation?
In the sunshine law 710.1B and 1A, clearly we have the right to speak before official action. So if there's 37 topics, and I can only speak on 2 inside of my 3 minutes, that doesn't mean I don't get to speak on other official actions.
This is denied. Thank you.
No, you're not denying it, you're noting
Microphone, please.
Yeah, you're not denying it, you're noting.
It's not even actually an objection under the Sunshine Act. You're substantively arguing with the policy change, but that's fine.
Did you not understand when
It wasn't tabled.
Okay.
The motion failed, so it's still getting first.
All right.
All right. Sunshine.
Man, I gotta turn my mic.
710, 1A and B. Okay. So, item number 4, discussion and possible vote on a resolution to require masks for all staff, students, and visitors during the regular school day effective 1/21/22. This requirement expires February 11th, 2022, unless the board meets and votes to renew this requirement before that date. So, do we have a motion and a second on this? Then we can discuss and then a vote. So we would need a motion and a second.
I make a motion that we require
Mr.
all
Farr?
masks
And then
as
Mrs.
such
Eckert?
until February 25th. 2 weeks is just very short. Let's do it for a month. That will be the day after our next, second board meeting.
So you're making a motion for this, but you're extending that to the 25th. And
February.
Mrs. Eckert, do you still want to second that? Okay, and she's going to second that still? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Is YouTube back up, Chuck? Oh, it's back up. Thanks, Abe. All right, yep. We've been, for anybody who's been around for a while, we've been live streaming since before live streaming was cool for these meetings. I think we were definitely in the old boardroom, and I think it was like 2015. So I don't know if all those meetings are still available on the website, or on the YouTube channel, but I suspect they probably are. So it's never intentional if the YouTube channel goes down. All right, discussion on this item.
I think it's going to be important that we continue masking in order to stay open. And I think the most important thing for us to do is be able to stay open. In-person class is so much superior to the virtual, particularly students that are handicapped or have special needs.
Whatever we can do is, I think staying in school is important. I'm not in favor of the length of time with that motion, so I think that that's a reasonable request. I just don't want to see it that long, so that's where I'm at.
I personally disagree with it.
Get your mic.
This is the only place we're putting our kids in masks. I mean, you go to the public, you go to dinner, you go to events, you go to sporting events, the arenas, concerts, everything. Kids aren't masked, parents aren't masked. They're more susceptible outside of school than anything to get this. To me, you are restraining the kids, especially the younger generation, from watching how to pronunciate words, communicate with each other, facial expression. I'm totally against it.
The other thing that I will add is there was a study that was in the Wall Street Journal on January 10th. It was quoted from the Mayo Clinic, and it shows there's a chart in there that shows the time and exposure length depending on the type of mask you're wearing. And there is some pretty good evidence coming out that realistically, unless you're wearing an N95 mask, that you're probably not going to prevent spread. And so, you know, using the traditional classrooms in the primary center and intermediate center, really with the length of time, you know, if you have somebody that's COVID positive next to you and you're wearing and you're within 6 feet and you're wearing a cloth mask and the other person is, the length of time that's quoted here is about 27 minutes. If neither one is wearing anything, it's the 15-minute guideline. And so, you know, I'm not sure with this Omicron variant whether masking does a significant help unless it's N95. So while I am in favor of, because the numbers are so significantly high right now, we are seeing those numbers just start to come down in Wyoming County. So if you look at the curves out of the earliest hit areas like New York and Boston, there's a significant peak and then a significant drop off. So we were in the neighborhood of about, reported, which is obviously a lot higher in terms of cases, 300 plus on a 7-day rolling period. That's starting to come down in the 250-ish level, and my guess is in a couple of weeks that's going to start to collapse. So while I was in favor of it previously, it really had to do with trying to keep school open as best we can because I value in-person learning over masking. I think that situation is likely to change soon, and I think the evidence based on previous variants, I think masking did more to slow that spread, but with Omicron, it doesn't appear that masking is as important as it was previously. So again, these are my opinions. I'm quoting a Wall Street Journal study again on July 10th that was published, or sorry, January 10th that was published. You know, if we do go to optional masking, those that are very concerned about the spread of Omicron to their child or staff does have an option of an N95 mask. That exposure time, if you're next to somebody without a mask and you're wearing an N95, is about 2.5 hours. It's only 3.3 hours with a cloth mask, meaning, you know, even if we require universal masking in schools, it doesn't provide that many more minutes of protection if you're in a traditional setting like the IC and the PC. High school is a different case because we're rotating classes and moving around a lot more. Anyway, that long-winded explanation was me saying I believe that with the county numbers being high, it may be good to extend it, but the evidence of masking with Omicron is not overwhelming the way it was for previous variants.
John, as a clarification, when you're saying 200 or 300, you mean per thousand, right? Like that's the statistic?
No, that was for the physical population. We were
Over the course of a certain number of days?
7 days.
Okay,
yes.
yeah.
Sorry, I follow the numbers over a 7-day rolling period. Previous variants, the highest we got was about 150 under Delta. This one, I think the highest I saw was somewhere around 340. And obviously with the less severe parts of Omicron, that number is likely underreported by a factor of 5 to 10. So, you know, that's the reason why we're seeing this drop off so quickly. Is the reality is everybody's going to get it, has gotten it, or vaccination's providing some level of protection. So, you know, it's going to drop off quickly because you start to lose vectors of spread. So, you know, everybody talking like we're entering the endemic phase of this. So, you know, the pandemic part of it is concluding quickly. So, I'm just not in favor of going out until the 25th of February because I think that any threat of where we are in today's current condition will drop off quite a bit.
Thanks, John. Anybody else have comment to make? I'll say I'm not in favor. I'm sure that's shocking to everybody. We did, you know, the numbers that I look at are the ones of the cases in Wyoming County by day, like how many new cases, and then with the 7-day averages. So the number is different, but it's telling basically the same story. We have hit numbers that are higher than they've ever been for any kind of COVID in this county. However, they're already dropping off substantially, and the numbers we've seen this week so far are lower than what they've been since before Christmas. You know, as far as like, for the most part, like we're getting 19 cases a day, whereas the highest it was like 87 cases in one day, which I know that number is skewed by holidays and when people go for their testing and how long it takes to get back and that kind of thing. But like today, I think we had like 17 or something like that in the county, which is a day behind or something. Anyway, my whole point is, I know that there was a partial argument before that maybe the state would look differently upon recommendations for closure if we were fully masked, and we were last week, and that played no part in the discussion at all. So I'm still not in favor.
It just came back up. It just got a note, yeah. So I think it was down, it was reloading, but I think it's good now from what I'm hearing.
Okay, because they're telling me that it's finished, they're still.
Okay, maybe it's not up for everybody.
How many cases did we have whenever school shut down last week? What was how many cases, what was the impetus for that at the state level?
Paula, make sure you're using that mic too.
Yeah, you guys have to share the,
Joe, sorry, what was the, or,
The numbers.
I don't know if Heather's still in here. How many cases did we have last week when the school was closed by the state?
I don't have the last week numbers, but I have like this week, like so far. The high school, we were at 10, the intermediate 15, and the primary 6, as it
That's
stands
this
right
week.
now. Correct. And then we had, the all-call went out on the numbers, the 14-day, like the last 2 weeks. So that's posted too on the website. But I just don't have them at my fingertips right now. But these numbers are just so far this week, 10, 15, and 6.
So I'm trying to like think about what was it when we got closed and what, if the mask was, I don't know.
at the high school, we had, I think, 69 cases of probable or confirmed at that time, when that phone call went out. I don't know what those numbers ended up being. I don't recall off the
Yeah,
top of my
the
head.
high school was high, the 14-day.
Yeah, the
It's like
14.
double, then it's like double the.
Yeah. There is, I'm not sure, it should be live soon. We will be having these numbers on the website for people to be able to see these. Anyway, they're working on that program now. But, that's where I'm at. I don't know if there's more discussion. Do you have?
Real quick, on an unrelated topic, the live stream is not currently up. It will be up soon, but the meeting is being recorded, so it could be watched if somebody missed this piece of it. So Lori, you were correct. It was up for one of the people that reloaded, but not all.
Okay.
Can we, if we vote on this motion, we then modify or do another one that's got a different date?
I didn't hear what she said.
She asked if we vote on this motion and it doesn't pass, can we, if we want it, we would have to add another item, right?
You don't, no, because
could-
the issue, as identified in this, whether or not masks are going to continue, is
Okay.
already a listed item on your agenda. So you don't have to do the two-step process of adding another motion. Someone can simply make a motion if
They
this
can
one,
amend,
if this
they
one
amend this
fails.
motion and
Right.
make another motion too.
They don't even have to do that. You would call this motion. If it fails, someone can make another motion. Obviously, if it carries, nobody can make a
Okay.
motion on that topic.
So the other option is if we don't think that there would be the support and we know that we can recall this motion on this one, right?
You mean the mover can withdraw his motion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if there's no other discussion, then we can roll call vote this with this date.
Do we have a first and second?
This one would be that it is effective tomorrow, which the other one would have expired tomorrow. And the new requirement would expire February 25th, which is the day after our next, 2 board meetings out. Unless we vote before then to renew it.
Holly, can I just ask for clarification? I believe it was Owen that came up to speak. When Owen came up to speak, was he in favor of keeping the masks or not?
I
He was in-
believe Owen was in favor of keeping the masks so that he wouldn't have to miss any more games and stuff if the school were to close.
Okay.
That's correct.
First of all, I applaud. That's very courageous for a student to come up and face the board. And I just, having students myself, children who are athletes, and all students, I just ask the board to, consider his statement before voting.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Widener?
No.
Mr. Burke?
No.
Mrs. Bennett?
No.
Eckert?
No.
Mr. Franco?
No.
Mrs. Goebel?
No.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
No. So the motion fails. Is there,
So now can I make the next one?
Sure.
So the same thing, but with the original date of February 11th.
so
Which is
a
2
motion for the same verbiage as it was originally published with the February 11th expiration?
So that's essentially till the next board meeting.
Yes, the next board meeting is scheduled for February 10th.
So and my logic on that is John's perspective on the case rates.
Will that reach-
John's perspective on the case rates is, I think, accurate, is that they're going down. It's interesting because Omicron also isn't, it doesn't make you as sick depending on your vaccination status. So a lot of people get what they think is a cold and so they're not testing, which is great if that's however the caseload goes down. And I really personally want to be true to the parents and students who've spoken, not here and also on email, that have just said again and again, they just want to keep the kids in school. So I understand your perspective on it's really hard for little kids to learn without face features. I don't think it's forever, and I want us to do whatever we need to do to keep the kids in school. And I know that we closed right after we did this last time, but I do think that the best chance we have of not spreading this would be to just continue with the masks for 2 more weeks.
And before there's any other commentary on this motion, is there a second on Ms. Eckert's?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, any other discussion on the new motion? Okay,
You changed it back to the 11th, right?
Yeah.
yeah, but it was,
Okay.
yeah, still mask required, but until the 11th.
Mr. Widener? No. Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
No.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes?
Mr. Franco?
No.
Mrs. Goebel?
No.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
No. The motion fails.
And if I can relay the recommendation of both the, retiring superintendent and the interim superintendent to invite a motion to extend the mask for the single day of tomorrow.
To Monday.
Yeah, so that mask would be optional as of Monday.
Do you want me to make that one? I'll
Yep.
make that motion that the all-call will go out, and this will begin on Monday. Correct?
So it's this motion, but with the date of essentially,
It lifts so the last motion failed, so the masks will be going away. The request was so that there's not as much confusion tomorrow and not sending out all calls late tonight, was to just not change it till Monday. So there's a motion
Starting Monday.
that the mask requirement be lifted effective January 24th. So we have a motion that the mask mandate be lifted January 24th instead of tomorrow. Laura?
I think Ms. Bennett made that motion.
Yep, and Ms.
Yeah,
Vogel.
Got it.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yep.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Mr. Widener? Yes. Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. So that was a request going into this. I am going to table number 5 because there is no requirement that's going to be going forward. So we don't need a vote to table that, right? We just,
Well, since it's on the agenda, we should have, I would invite a motion to table just to be on the
I'll
safe
make a motion to table.
okay.
Second.
Item number 5.
Seconded by Mr. Widener. Any other discussion?
You can't discuss.
Oh, that's right. All right. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Mr. Widener? Yes. Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
And Holly, one thing is a discussion, it's not really a discussion item, but because of that motion, mask optional, It's good to remind folks that that does not supersede the close contact requirements, so
Correct.
we're allowing.
So this is for regular classroom attendance. If a student is a close contact, as was voted on last time, where they would previously, if they were unvaccinated, which is almost all the kids now unless they've been boosted, they would have to quarantine at home. We said that without symptoms, they can come to school, but they would have to wear a mask. I believe it was for 5 days if they're a close contact, as long as they don't have symptoms. That does not supersede the current and existing federal mandate for school buses. That still stands. And any of the PIAA competition rules that are out there that the district and the coaches have been following. So this is for the regular school day.
I think it's 10 days for, but I don't think it's 5.
They're close contacts?
Is it 5? I don't know that.
I think it
So
was changed to 5.
I thought it was 5. I think it was the same as whatever a vaccinated kid. That's what, we made it the same as what so whatever the recommendation for a vaccinated student was, we made it the same for an unvaccinated
I just
student
don't
with
know.
no symptoms.
Yeah,
Whatever-
it was-
there's
Yeah,
some-
so if that was
have 5.
10, then it's 10, but whatever, that was the change. is
5,
in the-
okay, thank you. Thanks for
5.
clarifying.
Okay.
So the close contact has to continue to wear a mask for 5 days?
Correct.
Yes.
5 if asymptomatic.
There has been some
Present case.
confusion as well about if let's say at my house, I have COVID and my kid is in the school, if I say, you know what, I don't feel right about sending him to school when I have COVID, we have it in the house, which I think we can all agree is a different level of exposure to a kid at school. That if I want to keep my kid home and quarantine them according to the old guidelines, that's still perfectly acceptable. We welcome that if that's what the family wants to do. It would be excused, and you just have to contact the school and let them know, talk to the nurse, let them know that you have cases in the house and that you're going to quarantine as a family until you get through that. So, we're not trying to restrict the kids who aren't vaccinated, but we're also not trying to restrict the families who want to do something a little bit more restrictive than what we're doing here with that.
Right, and if you contact guidance or any administrator, they will turn their virtual programs on so they can do schoolwork from home.
Yeah, I know personally that if my kid were a close contact at school with no symptoms, I would feel differently about how to handle that situation than if I had COVID and they live with me and they're going to be with me all the time and we can't separate ourselves. I mean, I have teenagers, so they are separated. They're in their bedrooms watching TV and playing video games. But, I digress.
But it's very easy because it took one call to Mr. Bosher and we were up and running in 10 minutes.
Yeah. All right. Item number 6, completion by TASD board members of the LIU election ballots. So you all have those. Our LIU representative is Lori.
I recommend everyone on here. I've worked with them many years ago. Some of them left, and there is a couple new people down there that I've come to know, and I would strongly suggest that we accept every school board director from every school district listed here.
So everybody has their own, this isn't something we need to vote on, everybody has their own ballots that Carolyn provided. You just fill those out before you leave tonight. It is an uncontested, so you would just check all the yeses if you're going to follow Lori's recommendation. Sign, print, and today's date, and get those back to Carolyn before you leave today. Number 7, recommend that a resolution be adopted appointing Mary Jean Egan as Open Records Officer for the Tunkhannock Area School District effective 1/21/2022.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Widener and Mrs. Goebel. Any discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 8, recommend that a resolution be adopted approving an agreement for 2021-2022 school year between the Luzerne Intermediate Unit and TASD for community and school-based behavioral health teams, IBHS services, group and individual.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Widener and Mrs. Bennett. Any discussion?
They've been working in our schools for many years.
Great.
It's the same team of people.
All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 9, the review of the district's health and safety plan. This is required 6 months after we passed the first one to review it. We wrote the first one and passed one that was relatively flexible. So I'm not, have you all looked it over? Are there changes that you want to see made from anything that's in there now? I believe it was written in such a way that it allows us to be flexible and to, you know, the cusp of what is local control. So, yeah, it doesn't hold us to any specific guidance or anything that exists out there right now.
We haven't seen the need for any changes, correct?
No.
Motion to approve.
Well, I don't think we have to do anything.
don't-
It was just,
We
we have to
don't
review it.
have
If
to
we
do
wanted to
anything, it's
change it,
just
we'd have to
review.
vote. But the way that it's written is,
We
it
have
gives
made a
us-
record that you reviewed it.
right, there was a requirement that we review it in 6 months.
Right.
We pulled it out, dusted it off, took a look at it again. All the words look the same, so.
Okay.
And this will continue in the next 6 months, we will do.
Yeah, I don't know when the requirement is over.
Well, it's a good question. Theoretically, because the state no longer has a mandate on it at all, we're only doing this to comply with the requirements for ESSER. I don't know if they're going to continue that requirement through the disbursement, which would be all the way through 2024, but that's possible. So you might be reviewing this every 6 months, long after a lot of this has become moot.
Pretty moot? Yeah. All right, any other discussion about the health and safety plan? Item number 10, recommend that a resolution be adopted approving the application for payment number 2 for $186,901.53 to Dunmore Roofing for the administration building roof. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Mr. Widener, do we have a second? Mrs. Goebel? Any discussion on the roof payment?
Mr. Shapolsky, can you give us an update? I mean, have you checked everything? Everything meets standards? Yep. And everything's good?
Lori, summarize what he said.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Summarize what he said so that people.
I only caught part of it, but
Maybe,
the...
could you
the
come to the
warranty-
microphone? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, can you? Something about...
I couldn't hear anything he
the
said.
warranty
No, I can hear.
Inspector was here too.
Yeah, so all of these roofs have a warranty on them, and in order for that to be covered,
Right.
they have to pass.
So that's the final payment for the administration portion of the project. Versico did their inspection, which gives us the warranty, the 20-year warranty on the roof. So we're done. All 3 projects are complete.
Okay.
All right?
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you,
Thank
John.
you, Mr. Polsky. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Any other board comments or things to discuss? Okay. And the floor is open for public comment on non-agenda, agenda, whatever suits you tonight.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Brody from Northmoreland Township. Daughters in 9th and 10th grade. I have a question about information that was shared previously. So I know at prior school board meetings, when there were discussions about whether or not we go to masks or whether or not we would go to virtual, there were comments that were made about how the Department of Health could step in at any time and shut us down. And then there were specific questions asked regarding what those numbers would be. And that information wasn't known at the time. So I'm curious, with this shutdown, did the Department of Health step in, or did we solicit from the Department of Health?
Well, we hit like, so 5%, they want you to report it to them at 5%. We hit 6%. So at that time, administrators.
So I'm confused, why wasn't that 5% shared when the public asked about that in previous school board meetings? Like what the number was when the Department of Health would
I didn't personally know at that time what that it was. So when they started talking about, hey, we have to contact the state, that's when I looked at it again.
So where did that information come from? I'm just curious how we missed that.
Jen, I'm not sure of this, but I believe what Heather said was at the time when, I think you might have asked the question, or somebody did, I think she said she didn't know at that time.
Yeah.
And then when they reported it, I don't know what happened after that, but I thought Heather said that she just didn't know that at the time, but I'm not 100% sure of that.
Like, I don't know, it doesn't prescribe how many days it would be closed or those kind of things. That was part of the discussion based on circumstances. But the triggering factor to call the state was, okay, they have this thing out there of 5%. There's also other ones of, if there's more than 2, what they call outbreaks, I think, in a building, or if there's a classroom that is specifically targeted that has a high number, and it could be closing a classroom only, closing a building, closing a floor, grade, that kind of thing. But once the whole building was up to over the 5%.
Can we get that information publicly? Because I know it was asked, and having previously not known, it was a surprise to me to hear that we solicited the Department of Education not knowing what those triggers were. It just seemed non-congruent.
No, she did at that time. So I think that, I don't think it was ever a confusion on Heather's part what that trigger was that they would want her to call at the 5%. And if you go to, when I go look for it, I Google search, PDE, COVID guidance, and it'll bring up like the sheet where they put the most recent things that are out there all the time from the Department of Education. And there is, at some point, it's probably not the top one, a couple back, what the CDC, Department of Health, all those different agencies, what their guidance was on these things. So it talks about like the contact tracing recommendations. It's all like one big document, but the contact tracing recommendations, the building closure recommendations, the classroom closure recommendations, and all of those things that are out there.
Is that 5% on a rolling, now 5 days since the guidelines changed? Is it 7? Is it 14? Like, what's the roll now that we're looking at for that 5% trigger? I just haven't seen numbers that look consistent with 5% of the high school population or the other populations, and I thought that was the highest of the numbers.
So they were very clear about that in like last year, because it was at a 14-day rolling period, right? And so this year, but they also would say if you closed for even one day, that would drop that number back to 0. You start over with the counting. Now, I don't know right offhand exactly what they said for that. Joe might be able to speak to that. But I don't think the number resets, but I don't think that number is held against us as we roll forward, because we closed, we took the kids away from each other. We already had 4 days that weekend, so it was, tacking a couple on at the ends.
Didn't it take us back to 0?
Well, I don't think there's anything officially that says it takes us back to 0 anymore, but it doesn't, that they're not going to say, well, you came back and guess what? We're still counting. We told you, we recommended you go out for 5 days, but we're going to count back 14. So you come back and guess what? You're already exceeding that amount again. So
what's the rolling number now? Or is there a rolling number?
I'm
just wondering what the threshold is. I'm still confused at what the number is.
So Jen, if you Google, as I just did it, you Google search PD closure guidelines. And so it's a maximum 14-day suspension of in-person learning recommended by the Department of Health. The following criteria are met. 5% of students or staff confirmed in a 14-day window. And so then there's some additional criteria around some ORs below that, but they do have it published right on their website.
Okay. Would be helpful if we heard numbers that were consistent with what the rolling numbers were, so we could kind of figure that out, because it seems extremely confusing when you're trying to follow it.
The intent right now, and Mr. DeLuca is working on it with tech support, is to have our numbers on there daily, on the website that parents can see by building. Right? Am I quoting that correctly? Okay.
And then I have a question. Are you guys members of the community of the school district?
Are you talking?
I am not. Are you?
I am not. I'm from Bucks County. My partner is from the area.
So I'm curious. I don't have the details of the policy changes that were put into effect, but I'm just confused. It seemed to me like you guys voted on something, on a measure, and then the solicitor just changed it, and then there was a revote. And to me, that seems odd, because you guys wouldn't have been there months ago when there were 60-plus, lots of students like spoke and things like that
I was.
against the mask mandate. It just seems odd that you guys would be able to enact that.
No, they didn't enact it. He guided on the exact procedure, step by step of, normally the Robert's Rules of Order allow a lot of flexibility and informality on a small board like this, but because there are people right now that are intent on picking apart every single vote, every single measure taken, he was just guiding us through the monotony of...
Well, I thought that there was a vote to not extend the masks, and then there was a revote to extend it for
Yeah,
tomorrow.
The first vote was for a date farther out.
No,
and-
Right, but there was a date changed, and it was by the solicitor, as far as what I could hear.
But for the record, I was just relaying a recommendation that had been made by the superintendent. It wasn't actually...
They had. I was going to do that next anyway, because it had been,
Okay.
recommended that if we don't continue with a mask requirement, that we at least just not have it change until Monday.
Okay.
So that the messaging could be out there, and they could reiterate the stuff about they don't want it to be a matter of saying, there's no more masks required, and then kids who are supposed to be not quarantining with their close contacts or whatever, nobody's wearing a mask when they come in tomorrow. So they just want to get the messaging right to the kids so that they know, okay, no, if you were a close contact, you do still need to wear a mask, and if you.
I'm just surprised that we didn't have that in place, knowing that the deadline was already passed, so, okay.
All right. Thanks,
All right.
Jen.
Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Okay, got a couple questions from, one was from page 65. So I am concerned about that sentence, no participant may speak more than once during any comment period without permission of the presiding officer. The last school board meeting, there was a lot on the agenda and a lot of things I didn't get to talk about, and so that would be a concern for me. Even if it's 4 minutes per person, there was a lot of things I couldn't comment about, and so that's a concern for me, that one. And then on page 73.
What was that one? Could you repeat what that one was?
Sorry. It's page 64, maybe page 65, at the top.
Very first one.
Just that one sentence. It's kind of by itself. And then it's actually part of the health and safety plan. So this is going to be kind of a suggestion, because I've been doing some research on ventilation, and it's actually called environmental mitigation for COVID. So just wondering what our school district did kind of specifically for this one. It's D on page 73 under ARPS requirement, cleaning and maintaining healthy facilities, including improving ventilation. I can share this with you guys with email later. There's a man named Stephen Petty who is an environmental engineer, and he's like all about this kind of stuff. He did some studies on how to get better ventilation in schools, and there was a school he participated with in Ohio, I think it was, and the kids were autistic and they couldn't wear masks. And they just sailed through COVID last year with nobody getting COVID. I think there was a couple of people that got it, but it was from outside sources. They did some sort of really great ventilation. They got grants, and they did some really great ventilation stuff with their school, ventilation engineering. So I don't really know what was going on with you guys. I know it's in the plan here, so I'm just asking what specifically went on here. But it is, it worked for them. So I can share that website, that source. And thank you, by the way, for sharing the mask study. That was great. There's a lot of them out there that masks don't work. So I think that was all. Oh, the other thing was there haven't been any kids seriously ill or die from our district with COVID. Is that right? Am I right about that?
I'm sorry.
There haven't been any kids that are seriously ill or died from COVID in our district, students.
Well, we're clearly not aware of any that have
No,
been
I'm not
seriously
aware of
ill or
any.
died.
Okay.
And we wouldn't, you know.
And we-
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is IMO, in my opinion. A lot of this is overreaction. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila.
I'm Shira Knight, Tunkhannock Township. I guess I'm confused. I missed out on the board meeting, the policy
Sorry,
meeting.
can you pull that
Could you put
closer?
the mic
Sorry.
down?
Sorry. The policy meeting that you guys had the other day, and maybe I'm confused, but on the agenda here, on number 4, page 4, number 3, letter C, the board policy 903, the changes sound a lot like what you read in the beginning, Holly, so I'm just confused. If this is the second reading of it, why did when you first started this, you said that it looked like you had amended and made changes to the existing policy that we had in 903, because I did read policy 903 before and I was familiar with it, and what you read in the beginning of this meeting was different than what it originally was. And I think George had alluded to that in his sunshine violation, but I don't know how that has changed when this is only the second reading. So that's the first reading. Is this the first reading or the second reading?
First.
Okay, so first reading, how did the policy, I guess I'm confused why the policy that you started the meeting with is different than the already approved policy. It looks like it's coinciding with your changes that you're looking to bring upon. Second, when Jen spoke about everybody not knowing these numbers, we 100% were told at these board meetings by Heather directly, go back and look at the tapes. You all sat up here and told us that you didn't know when the state gets involved with the school, you didn't know the rolling time frame, you didn't know the numbers, Heather didn't know. So to sit here and say today, oh, Heather knew, she knew when to pick up the phone and call the state, somebody's lying to us. Look at the tapes of these meetings, because this is very sad. It's also very sad. I feel really bad for the members of this community. I really do, because we have a board, and I know there are some people on our board that are really there for the right reasons, and the others, I'm not sure what you're there for. But to sit here and say that community members are going to nitpick and do those sorts of things, that is absolutely 100% not what is happening with the public here. These lawsuits, I would just ask you to actually read through the laws and do things lawfully, so that the citizens that are paying the taxes to fund this school don't have to once again reach into their pockets and pay lawyers to fight you guys to follow the rules. Like, that's not fair. And you guys want to sit up here and act like they're nitpicking, and when George says an objection, you just say overruled. It's sad. It's really sad. As a taxpayer, it's very disheartening. It's very sad to see this, because you should do better. We should really do better. Our school should do better. This is the last meeting I'll be at, but I really pray and hope that you find it within yourselves to look up the laws, stand up and do what's right, so that the community doesn't have to foot the bill many times. And I do agree with George. I've looked at things. I think that your solicitor is ill-advising you. You're going to be fighting a sunshine law expert lawyer. So, I mean, good luck. I really mean that, and I really hope that you will take the time to do the right things for our school and for our community. Don't make these parents have to fight this, because this is ridiculous. Do the right stuff, follow the laws, and don't try to ramrod policy through and change things without listening to the parents, because that's what you're doing. Everything that I've seen so far is, oh, do you have an objection, parents? Okay, well, tell us what it is, and we'll tell you to sit back down. And that's not really cool. We deserve better. We deserve more. Our kids deserve more. You're here to educate. Get that as your priority instead of policy change and doing whatever you want. I do feel like you are going to there will be repercussions, legal repercussions, like George said. And unfortunately, you guys are, like I said, I hope that you will really take that into consideration and follow policy, because it's going to come back to bite you if you don't.
Thank you, Shira.
Okay, George Uhas, Tunkhannock. So I'll try to work backwards. I waited to the new year also to start doing, official stuff. A lot of it was common sense and common law, looking for courtesy. You can go back months, even years, when I would come in here all filthy, covered with concrete, because I was working across the street. It was just me speaking sometimes, just me. And then finally start ramping up, and then, got tired of listening to me. I got the president's private and personal emails and social media accounts showing where I saw this coming. And a few meetings ago, I warned to be careful. And sure enough, I saw Lake Lehman do it. I saw some other schools do it where the solicitors are involved with. You have to solicit this stuff from the Pennsylvania Association of School Boards. You can use it as a rouge that they told you to do it. We know why you're doing it. I have it in writing, and I'll display it. The problem is that 2 years, 3 months, and 6 days from now, we're going to fight another battle from some stupid grant that you all agreed to, that you told us to Google, and there's 6 versions of it, so we didn't Google it, right? We couldn't get into it. When you guys take on these grants, we want a copy of the grants that you're seeing. You want us to have a copy of the grants that you're seeing, not go Google it. Things don't update. You guys are getting ready to walk into this ESSER grant, and I know we have more time into it than all you guys have. If you show a show of hands, anybody read the entire ESSER grant? A show of hands. If you don't show your hands, I'm just going to assume you didn't read it. You got to read that grant, because you're writing, you're just basically signing up to the, with the devil, and there's devils in the detail, and it's terrible stuff. Last meeting, clearly there were some school board members who weren't prepared to take those votes. There were school board members who didn't know they can call in to be part of that. You guys don't even have the basics down for the administrative policies, let alone the board policies. You just don't have it together, and you're spending more energy on me. Sure, get after George, do this because of George. The handles of power will swing, and then it can come back on us. So don't attack 903. If you're not bolstering our ability to help you, Holly said it at the last board meeting, some people don't even come prepared. They ask solicitor, hey, what do you think, solicitor? And they cheat. It's like going to school, not studying, and asking the kid next to you for the answer. And I didn't elect him. So please do the homework. You gotta do the homework. My goal is, and was, to eventually get us to communicate. And the Sunshine Law in our state constitution and state laws will let us communicate. There can be people that have wildly different viewpoints than me that are gonna be able to sit up here and talk because I protected it, and hopefully you guys will protect this. Because there's going to be people going to come up here, they're going to want some crazy stuff that I disagree with, but I'm going to move right aside and let the crazy person come up here that's crazier than my viewpoint and let them talk. Not at the leisure of the president. It's clearly not going to do well. Anybody knows that that's not going to do well in the First Amendment. Having representation, if I was given the agenda appropriately ahead of time, I could have had representation at that policy change meeting, trying to convince you with case law, showing you where making these changes could be bad, and we can actually resolve it in a board meeting, at a committee meeting. Instead of you ramrodding it through, passing it, now you're forcing civil action, like Holly said about a dozen times in the last few months. Get a lawyer. Get a lawyer. That costs the district money. It's not her money. You enjoy spending the district's money getting a lawyer? Pay attention to what's going on. You all can overrule this garbage. We can't let this keep going on. Taking away our representation, just listen to it. You're trying to take our representation away and putting restrictions on them. It's not going to do well in the civil court. And now she, almost single-handedly, is causing that because she's being spiteful against me. And when I'm gone, there'll be other citizens who want to talk.
Thank you, Mr. Uhas. Any other public comment? Well, it has been delightful, everybody. I would look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Don't all say it at once. Adjourn. Thank you.
Sure, of course. Good luck. Did I hear you?